in if you have a question, call on you. But we'll start with General Manager Joe Cronin.
All right, welcome. You guys hear me okay? Okay. Trade deadline 2023 is over with. This one was unique. It was the goal that we set, when I started this job, was to build a championship roster around Damian Lillard. So, over the past little over a year, we've been transacting with that goal in mind. The goal going into this trade deadline was to be extremely aggressive. We had identified several players who, for us, were difference makers. And difference makers can mean a lot of different things. For us, difference makers meant high-end impact players that were incredible fits on our roster. So, there's plenty of players that can fit that category. Many are not attainable. So we, tried to work through that and, okay, who's the realistic ones that we can make really aggressive offers for in order to hopefully bring on our team. So worked it super hard, came up empty. So from there, decided, okay, our new pivot, our path, if we came up empty, was to just be super opportunistic in the transactions we were looking to do. Look for good value, either way, whether it meant adding a player or losing a player, and we just transacted accordingly. So our main goal throughout those transactions were, how do we build for future rosters, future seasons rosters, where it goes back to some of the stuff we did at the last trade deadline. Accumulate as many assets as possible in order to make a big push for high-end talent. Last year's trade deadline was a little different because it was more, okay, we needed contracts and tools to even be able to pull that off, like trade exceptions and that kind of stuff. This time we were more in just asset acquisition mode. Get picks, get young players we like, get guys that hopefully can grow and build with us for this season and beyond. So, we want to be championship level as soon as possible. So for us, it's disappointing. Like, we want to get out there, and we would love to have a team out here tonight that is ready to rock. And we're borderline anxious to push all of our chips in. We can't wait for that moment to happen. It just hasn't come up yet. And, it's my job to be the voice of reason, to be very diligent, to not make a big mistake, to not get the wrong guy, to not overpay, to not give up on somebody that could eventually become a really good player. Like, I've got to be really smart about this because, it's trying to thread a really thin needle here where, we don't have room for error. We need to get this right. We want to maximize Damian's time. I know it's hard, like when I come out, oh, well, we're looking forward to this summer. We're, have faith we can get something done. It feels a little empty, like it's false hope or, unrealistic promises. But hopefully our track record has shown that we're willing to be really aggressive. I think, I said this last year at the trade deadline. We went after some guys, couldn't get them. Hopefully that trade exception will come into play. Hopefully we can put our pick into play, and that got us Jeremy Grant. So, and that we went into that draft with the number 7 pick, and we're trying to be aggressive with that. Like, you won't see from this group a lack of trying or a lack of innovation or a lack of creativity. We're going to be ridiculously aggressive to the point where once we push our chips all the way in, like deal to deal, you might look and say, wow, they lost that deal. They gave a lot for that guy. But no, that's just us pushing our chips in. We feel extremely obligated to put a great roster around Damian Lillard. And when I say we, that's from the top. Jody and I have had a lot of conversations about how important it is for us to do right by Damian. And we plan to do that. But, and you can ask Damian this, but he understands this, that it doesn't always fall into place immediately. We understand the timeline is short as far as we want this runway to be as long as possible for him. But at the same time, as long as the intentions are in the right place, we're willing to wait it out for that terrific opportunity to present itself. You got to have the assets to be able to maximize these opportunities, and we think we did some of that here at this trade deadline. We improved, our asset pool. So we're going to keep working. We're not disappointed. We're positive about our ability to get things done, and still really hopeful about this team's future. So with that, I just want to do a bunch of questions with you all. Talk about anything you want, really. Haven't seen anybody in a while.
I know it's delicate to get into details about negotiations, but I guess I'll ask, how close did you guys come to maybe pulling off a big deal, and were there just hang-ups in terms of pick, this uncertainty of the 2023 pick, and then, of course, whether the opponent wanted certain players you weren't willing to give up?
Yeah. The negotiations were all over the board. Sometimes you call, you get shot down immediately. Like they don't even want to listen. Call back 2 weeks later, has anything changed? No. Okay, that one's done. Others you get more involved, like, no, it would take this or that. And it just never gets too substantive where you're not making a whole lot of progress. Finally, one team pulls out. Others, we had one where, there's a good offer on the table. It was just way too much for us. We had a good player, it was just too much. So, it's a wide ranging. It's funny when you're going after those top players, like, it can be a really quick exercise, especially in a league that's so competitive right now. There weren't a whole lot of teams looking to, take a step back. So, we just have to make sure we touch all those touch points and just, check every box and, really be active, and we were. So I think, you lay some foundation as well for future talks, which help, at least, how each other feel about it, how each team feels about each other's rosters and those kind of things. So, so that's a little like with Jeremy, where, we built that foundation. Eventually those talks heated up. It took 4 months. Mm-hmm.
So how do you view the protections on the Chicago pick? Is it positive or as a hindrance?
Well, it's positive because you're protected. You can always walk back those protections. Now, it takes two to tango. You have to work out that deal with that team, but it's nice that pick can never be worse. Like, we're not giving away something that ends up being the number one pick, or, it's lottery protected. So we have that insurance in place. But it does complicate things to where you do have to, if we want to trade future picks, you either have to word them really funny where it leaves the other team unsure of whether they're going to get it, the first allowable draft kind of language where, okay, the first one we can really trade is 2025, and that's if 2023 goes away. So these teams get really uncertain real quick, and you definitely lose your power down at the bottom of those picks. 2029, will we ever see that kind of stuff? So, it definitely complicates putting pick packages together where you're definitely limited. We only have 7 first-round picks. You can only trade every other year. So even a team, say like Phoenix, who did it this year, they had all their picks. They could give 4. We're only allowed to give 3, and we'd have to renegotiate that current protection package.
Did you ever enter or, kind of test the waters with Chicago this trade deadline about removing those protections?
Yeah, Chicago and I talked pretty much during every transaction window where it's, hey, if it becomes necessary, would you be open to this? So we kind of lay a real light foundation to where, well, I'll call you if things heat up kind of thing. But basically trying to tee that up a little bit in case we have to hurry.
And is that something where you'd have to forfeit something like second rounders or?
Yeah, it's negotiable. It's whatever we work out, whether we change the protections to a certain year and deliver it, or whether we incentivize them somehow just to get the full pick back, or it could be a player, it could be all kinds of different variations.
Joe, what is your understanding of where things stand right now with Gary, with the physical and that situation going on with Golden State right now? And then also there is this report in The Athletic that literally just came out that says that the Blazers training staff had been pushing him, I'm reading this verbatim, had been pushing him to gut through it, giving him Toradol shots. This had not been relayed to the Warriors during the negotiation process. Is that true?
So I'm just hearing about the Gary Payton thing like literally 5 minutes before I walked in here, so I haven't heard from any teams about this. So for now, I have to defer.
Joe, one of the things that both you and Chauncey have talked about a lot is the lack of size of the roster. Technically, you bring in a bit more size in a guy like Cam Reddish, but functional size where you are in the lineup. Was that one of the goals going into that deadline, and how close were you to getting that? Are you happy with obviously not happy with it, but are you okay with where the roster currently sits for the rest of the season with that lack of size?
Right. A big thing I've talked about, I think, pretty much all season long and even going into this season was we have a lot to learn about this roster. And now we're north of 50 games in, and I think we've learned quite a bit. And one of the most profound things we've learned, and I think we assumed going into it, but we feel even more validated now, is that Damian and Anthony make you elite offensively. Pretty much any way you cut it, those two are so good that no matter what, we're going to thrive offensively. The last month, our offensive rating's been through the roof. I think they're really starting to settle in. So going into this trade deadline, and even before, like we've been trying to do this, like with the addition of Jeremy and some of the other guys, we're trying to support these guys with, real defenders, with real size, with real length. So we've been incrementally building towards that. I'll be the first to acknowledge that we're not big enough, we're not long enough, we're not tall enough, we're not defensive-minded enough. This is something that's going to be a continual push from us, and you'll definitely see me lean way towards that side. Like, I think it would take quite a bit for our offense to break. So transactionally, we'll be really focused on adding guys that complement those two guards on the other end of the floor specifically.
Joe, if that deal ends up being rescinded, is there a spot for Gary here? Is he? Oh yeah. Back up. Okay.
Yeah, Gary was great here. We really enjoyed Gary, and these things happen in the NBA sometimes. Not a lot. You don't see physicals get failed a lot, but these things happen. Guys return, and I think our environment and our relationship with Gary's fine, so I'm not too concerned about it, actually.
Joe, what's your stance on going for the playoffs or playing for a pick?
Yeah. I want to see these guys compete. We're trying to build a culture here of, playing hard and competing, and I think we're seeing this. We've seen this a lot this year where night in, night out, these guys are giving it their all, and I thought that was an important first step for us. We have a lot of fine-tuning to do in this roster. There's a lot of things I want to change as we refine and get into super-duper win-now mode. But I want that culture of competitiveness to continue through. Like, these guys go out and do your thing. And I think they're very capable, and I'm really interested to see what this new group has in store.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it possible that we see what happened last year if it gets to a certain point?
It's too soon to say. I think sometimes, those things, like guys get injured or whatever, or you just have a bad run and things change and you decide to play some young guys, or you look at certain rotations or whatever. But as currently constructed, the way things are going, I don't foresee that being, paramount in our minds. But knowing we'll adjust as needed.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the moves you made this week will help in the summer?
Yeah, sure. Certain things come into play, whether it's, the obvious ones are we got a first and I guess potentially now 5 seconds. So those are, good currency in the marketplace and definitely help enhance a package. There were other things that, we had to do just financially where, the Josh Hart trade, he was about to be a free agent, so the thought was, let's get something for him and not lose him for nothing. Those kind of things. So I think we're definitely positioned with a better asset pool than we started with, and for me, that's really important.
Joe, it's understood that people in your position work with their star players on kind of the direction of the franchise, and Damian's obviously a stakeholder here. Has Jeremy entered that role as well? Like, is he part of those discussions when you talk about the direction of this team, even though he potentially will be a free agent this summer?
Yeah, I try to be a good communicator with all the guys. There's only so much you can share sometimes, and there's only so much they want to hear sometimes. But with Jeremy, as our relationship has grown, I've tried to get him more and more involved. A lot of it is I just value their opinion. They're the ones playing against these guys every night. Like, who do you like around the league? What types of players would complement your game? What types of players would allow you to do things that you're unable to do right now? So with these guys, they're so sharp and intuitive, and they're so well versed of what their opponents are capable of. I try to take advantage of that. And at the same time, I think it's just a level of respect that I have for him where, I think it's important to communicate and say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm seeing with this team, here's what I think we need, here's some potential outcomes that could come from this trade deadline. So, going into this trade deadline, I laid that out for Jeremy. I think it's important that I thought it was important that he knew that we plan to be really, really aggressive, and that if we weren't really, really aggressive, we would turn to be opportunistic, which might mean losing a guy or two, or might mean a few changes at least. So I liked getting that in front of him, and I think he appreciates it. And I'd like to do that, more often with him, and I think we will as the relationship grows.
Is it important to get the extension done with him, or are you comfortable negotiating with him in free agency?
I don't want to get too much into negotiation stuff, but I think at this point it's just nice knowing that that he's been terrific for us. Like, he knows how we feel about him, and we feel very positively about how he feels about us. And I think if we have that foundation, hopefully we can figure things out.
We're gonna go right here first.
This is a fan base that has continually been told that free agency isn't exactly the best building mechanism here in Portland. You're sitting here saying, we're going to try to make a run at it this summer. The fan base was obviously, the majority of the fan base was disappointed by this trade deadline. Just what do you have to say to them about having to hold on for another, however many months, and you being able to pull this off?
Yeah. Free agency wise, I think, we're confident that we can go out and, win some free agent recruiting battles. We really believe in what we're building here, and I think our reputation is really strong around the league. Players love Chauncey Billups, and it's, the players, it's a really important relationship for them that, they have to see this person every day, all day. This is their, of like another teammate, with more, impact. So I think Chauncey, Damian, the environment we've built, our potential, I think, are all going to be, really intriguing pieces, especially as we continue to build this out. You see where as you become more and more competitive, you get more and more appealing, especially from these veteran guys that, their careers are, their timeline's getting shorter, and they're looking to win and, be in a great position. So I'm confident, and we'll never, be arrogant about our ability to get somebody, but we'll also never duck from, a recruiting battle against teams that, might have historically won out in those things.
We'll go right here.
Joe, you briefly touched on this off the top, but those conversations with Dame, how have those gone from a patient standpoint and saying, hey, look, we're trying to build around you? Just what have those conversations been like with him?
Yeah. Dame's great, as you all know, and I would encourage you to ask him, exactly how he feels about having to wait a little longer, about, how much his how much his urgency is kicking in. But Dame and I talk all the time. I mean, all the time. And, I'm straight with him. I tell him goals. I tell him pitfalls. Teach him the cap. I go over lists with him of potential guys, whether it's now or later. We talk about the draft. I mean, he's just so, he has such a good, like, GM mind. Like, he just enjoys it. But also, I mean, this is, him helping, decide his future. Like, who do I want to play with? What do we need? So, the conversations are deep and continual, but I think if you ask Damian, you'd hear an answer that says, we're in this together, and, we've talked a lot about being connected. We talked about that in the preseason, and I think we're as connected as ever, and hopefully, when you ask these questions, you'll hear that.
Jason and Sean.
Joe, can you just give kind of a thumbnail sketch on the guys that you acquired?
Sure. So the first one was we did Josh Hart for Cam Reddish. Cam, really talented, 23 years old, 6'8", wing, handle, pass, shoot, solid defender. I think this environment's going to be terrific for him. I'm excited about Cam. There's not too many guys his skill set, size, and age that you come across, and I'm encouraged by, him being here, and I'm excited about the development that we can put him through, and he's gonna get some playing time, and I think Chauncey's gonna be good for him and empower him, and I think we're gonna see some good things.
What's your read on why it hasn't worked for him?
Yeah, I mean, every guy's path is different. This league is so difficult, and sometimes it's situational, sometimes it's just your development curve. Like, some guys thrive early, some thrive late, and some it's just they just need a different opportunity or a different role. So it's really all over the board. And with Cam, I think, it's definitely not a question of talent. Sometimes it's just a question of getting the right opportunity, and hopefully we'll be able to provide something that's more amenable for him that way. Other guys we acquired, Matisse Thybulle, flat out elite defender. And, as you heard me talk earlier, that's something we're really emphasizing. So for us, Matisse has always been a target, and we were really excited to get him at what we thought was a pretty good price. So I'm excited about that one. Ryan Archidiacono, we've been wanting to add an additional guard. I think you saw like when we had some injuries early in the season, we didn't have enough guard depth, especially like head initiator, point guard depth. So Ryan will bring that. He'll bring, a stableness to the offense. He'll bring toughness. He'll bring, a pretty good skill set. He'll bring a great locker room presence. So we're excited to have just a tough dude that knows how to play. And then Kevin Knox, little bit like Cam, where, lottery pick that has had some highs and had some lows and jumped around a tad. But again, another really talented guy who, physical specimen that can shoot the ball, and is still developing. And I think our environments would be good for him.
Sean, Bill, Danny, and Aaron.
Joe, putting aside the current status of the trade, what was it that led you to, given that Gary was, your big free agent addition this offseason and, was a regular rotation player once he got healthy, what went into the decision that he was somebody you wanted to move off of for picks and he wasn't going to be a part of it going forward?
Mm-hmm. It was really strictly about the deal. We just thought 5 second-round picks and $8 million trade exception was too good to pass up. It was really no indictment of Gary or, how things had gone. It was just a way to improve our asset pool and then create this trade exception as well. So that was our sole motivation.
Bill, or Dan.
Joe, financially, it's something you've kind of highlighted on over a short period of time. Do you feel like that you have the right salary slots and exceptions and tools and everything necessary to make not only the big move that you hope to make this summer, but to fill out the rest of the roster? And I know you can't comment on other teams, but the Suns made the trade for Kevin Durant, and what's behind them after those three guys is limited. As you guys sit right now, you guys don't have three other all-stars. So how do you figure that out on the financial standpoint when you bring in an RFA in Cam, you've got early bird on Justice, like where do those things can all kind of slot in?
Yeah. No, it's something we pay close attention to, and something I alluded to a little earlier where, if you don't have contracts, you better have exceptions. If you don't have either, how do you make deals? So we were really careful to make sure that we still had contracts intact, knowing that if we were going to trade away a guy or two. So, it involves some counting where you're saying, okay, if it's this contract and this contract, what number can you get to? Or, if you're signing trading this free agent and add this contract, we're paying close attention to these counts. But you make a good point about filling out your roster post a big trade like that. And it's a challenge. It's where you have to get some of these right. You have to get, the Jabari Walker draft pick right. You can't miss, obviously, on Shaden Sharp. You have to, turn Cam Reddish into a player. You have to make sure Matisse Thybulle is really impactful for you. We just don't have a lot of room for error here, and that goes Like, we have to take each roster spot extremely seriously, you know, whether it's a two-way or your sixth man, and build as much depth as we can ahead of time, knowing we're going to need to backfill.
Bill Larry.
Joe, I understand it's a fluid situation, but on the Gary front, the piece that Sean read to you contained a fairly, I think, would be a serious implication that your training staff was pushing Gary to play through pain, injury, whatever, however you want to phrase it, tortal shots are not like a small thing. Given the timeline for him to get back was beyond what you guys did initially stated, can you, I guess, just respond to the implication of that report, but then also shed some light on the evolution of his health? And was he healthy in your mind when you traded him?
Player safety is super important to us. I mean, it's a super important thing around the league. You know, we were playing him. He was playing, and he had been cleared, and we were confident that he was healthy when he was playing. We would not have brought him back if we thought he wasn't healthy or if he was at risk. So, you know, you trust that we did the right thing, and you trust that our process was correct. And, you know, these reports, you know, I think if you knew the clearance process was proper, so I'll have to rely on that.
He was technically cleared weeks before he played too, right?
Yeah, you know, because we got into a pretty long ramp up where, yeah, it's cleared. You know, I don't want to get too deep into this, but, you know, quite a ways ahead of him playing. So we did a lot of 1-on-0, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3 build up to, you know, get him safely back in a 5-on-5 environment.
Just
Last question.
Yeah, Brenna mentioned frustration of the fans because you guys didn't land somebody. Another part of the frustration is that, once again, this has been going on for decades. They watched Dallas get a Kyrie Irving. They watched Phoenix, which was in the finals 2 years ago, best record last year. You know, had the best record this year before Booker got hurt. They had Kevin Durant. How much does that just make it more difficult for you to build a winner around Dame? When you may need not just one star, you may need 2 or 3.
Seeing other things happen around the league, it's for me, it's more motivating than anything. Like, I think we put more pressure on ourselves than anything to get this done. Like, we're extremely motivated to put as many players around Dame as we can, and we are really looking forward to having that opportunity. Now, pulling all that stuff off, I'll admit, is extremely complicated. And, you know, you just, again, this goes back to your positioning. Are you giving yourself the best opportunity to get these things done? Do you have enough assets? Do you have the right players? Do you have the right contracts? Do you have, to Danny's point, enough bench support to fill and be competitive once all those guys go away? So I would just say, you know, if anything, it's just more motivating than anything, that you want to compete with these teams and you want to be as or more aggressive than they have been.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.